So, a mission statement, right, is a formal summary of the aims of an organization. A vision statement, a concise, future-focused declaration of an organization's long-term goals. And a brand promise or brand statement defines who the organization is, who it helps, and what makes it unique. It basically summarizes the organization's purpose. Now, I would like to see through a show of hands how many of you somewhere in your life, whether it was through work or through an organization, have worked on a mission statement, a vision statement. Hands up if you've ever done something like that. Yeah. And it is so painstaking, isn't it? And it's, you know, everybody knows I'm an English teacher and I love words. And semantics, when you're trying to put together a vision or mission or brand statement, are so important because each word has to matter, right? So if you've worked on these, you understand what goes into it. And it's a really good practice, right? Because I can remember at some point in my career going, oh gosh, not again. You know, come on. But it's an important practice because it forces an organization to look at itself and to dive deeply into what it believes about itself and, more importantly, what it believes about the people it serves. So the United Methodist Church, as Chris pointed out, is no different from any other organization in this regard. Do you know that we, not necessarily our McHenry Church, but our denomination, has all three of these statements? Did you know that? Yeah. Do you care? Right. So we're going to do a little school teacher thing here. I want you to do some matching. I want you to match the following sentence that Mike's going to put up on the board to, in your mind, say whether or not you think it is a mission statement, a vision statement, or a brand statement. Open hearts, open minds, and you don't have to say this out loud, open doors. All right? Which of the three is that? Everybody got their thought on that one? Okay? To make disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world. Okay, and the last one? Love boldly, serve joyfully, and lead courageously. All right, you ready for the answers? Okay. Open hearts, open minds, open doors is our brand. It's our brand statement. Okay. To make disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world is our mission. All right? That's our mission statement. So love boldly, serve joyfully, and lead courageously is our vision statement. Anybody get them all right? Oh, awesome. A couple of you did. I can tell you I would not have. Right? If I hadn't put this message together today, I would not have gotten all of those correct. So our brand promise, right? Open hearts, open minds, open doors. It's written on the wall, right? Out in our fellowship area. So I'm sure many of you have seen that, right? And if you haven't, pay attention today when you leave because it's out there. And Kurt frequently talks about the mission statement. He will continually say that our job, our mission is to make disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world. Was that familiar to you as well? Yeah, that sound kind of familiar? But the vision statement, that was probably new. This might have been the first time you've ever heard it. So the first time I heard it was last month on November 30th at our church conference. Wendy Hardin Herman, who is our district superintendent, introduced it to us on that day. And so those of us who were there got it that day, but if you weren't there, today would be the first time you'd see it. So in essence, a concise, future-focused declaration of our long-term goals as United Methodists is to love boldly, serve joyfully, and lead courageously. Now, before I start talking about what that looks like, I should tell you that the Council of Bishops and the Connection Table, which is made up from people, as Chris pointed out, all over the world, began working together on this vision statement in 2021. So it was unveiled in 2025. It took 4 years, right? And I think about the times I complained about writing these statements when it took a week, but it took 4 years for them to get it just right. And I personally think they did a great job. I think it's an awesome aspiration for how we should live our lives as people of God and as United Methodists in this case. So let's unpack it a little bit. Let's begin with scriptural support for loving boldly. Chris?
Matthew 22, 37 to 39. Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." John 13, 34 and 35. "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another."
So in this scripture, the expectation is to love and to love boldly. But what does that look like in real time, right? In a Christian sense, I guess, loving boldly looks like a lot of things. But in most situations, personal, professional, and in organizations, it requires choosing what is right over what is easy or feels safe. It requires us to see God in every person. And sometimes loving boldly is misunderstood. Bold love isn't silent when the truth matters. Yet because we perceive things through different lenses, sometimes when we speak out, sometimes if we don't speak out, it can be misunderstood. We may be seen as being too rough, too harsh, or too weak. I'm sure that everyone here has at one time or another said or done something with the purest of intentions only to be misunderstood, right? We've all been there. When we speak boldly, we risk taking a hit to our reputation, whether that reputation is a personal one or a professional one. When we speak the truth, when we speak boldly in love, sometimes people don't like that very much. And then we get talked about. Gratefully, there's so much comfort in understanding that Jesus was misunderstood at times too, right? Loving boldly worries more about what God would think of us than what others might think. Because, thankfully, God knows our hearts and God knows our intentions. One of the reasons I like this part of the statement, love boldly, is because it isn't normally thought that those two words would go together. We like to experience love as warm and kind and fuzzy and gentle. It feels good, right? When we think of love, usually it feels good. But then you take the word bold and you put it next to it. Bold has more heft. Bold suggests strength and fortitude and courage. But you know what? When we reduce the definition of love to fuzzy and warm feelings, we take away a lot of its power. Some of you may know this book I'm about to reference. In 1968, right, Bill Milliken wrote a book called Tough Love. You ever heard of that concept? Yeah. The book called for a firm yet guiding hand when dealing for at-risk youth. He advocated for tough actions stemming from deep love, not cruelty. Tough love involves setting boundaries and accepting responsibility for our behavior. Right? Now, modern parenting has a bit of a version of that. Modern parenting kind of has formed tough love into the phrase, allow for natural consequences. Right? Every action has a reaction, right? And everything you do or say has a consequence. And so the modern version of tough love is kind of say, okay, now you've done this, now you need to feel the consequences of that. A simple example of that might be the child who repeatedly forgets to take a homework assignment to school. And so the parent, the child calls or texts the parent and says, Mom, Dad, I've got an assignment due today in whatever class and I forgot it. It's on the counter. And Mom and Dad are like, this happens a lot. But you got to bring it. You've got to bring that assignment. If you don't bring that assignment in, I'm going to get a 0. It's due today. And a parent who is practicing tough love or understand the consequences refuses to bail the child out. So the natural consequence in this situation is that the child receives a 0 on the assignment that he or she forgot to take to school. Mom didn't forget to take it, right? Bold love may feel harsh in the short term, but it serves the long-term good of either an individual or an organization. Bold love is designed to move something toward a healthy, not a dependency, future. Chris?
John 13, verses 14 through 16. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. Peter chapter 4, verse 10. Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms.
Thank you. In this statement, in our vision statement, after love boldly, we find the words serve joyfully. So as I was thinking about this, I thought, well, you know what? We're still basking in the glow of Christmas, right? It's still in our hearts. It's still here. And so it seemed only fitting to highlight Mother Mary as an example of someone who served joyfully. Mary accepted the call on her life to be the mother of Jesus. She didn't know what the future was going to bring, but she trusted God and spent a lifetime in service to God and to others. She proclaimed in the Magnificat, "My soul magnifies the Lord," understanding that her joy came from being a part of a plan, and that plan involved the salvation of humanity. Mary joyfully served through her life. One example being the wedding at Cana. You may recall that they started to run out of wine early at that wedding, and it would have embarrassed the bride and bridegroom and their whole family to run out of wine. So because she didn't want embarrassment to fall on the family, she served them by asking Jesus to create more, right? And of course, Jesus' wine was better than any of the wine that they had before, right? Because whatever Jesus touches is better than anything we know. So Mary also exemplified the reality, and this is important, serving joyfully doesn't always mean that in the moment we feel joy. Let me say that again. Serving joyfully doesn't always feel good, right? As a matter of fact, it kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but serving joyfully can be painful. Mary served her son from his first breath to his last. Without question, her service to him had many excruciatingly painful parts to it. I can't even imagine the pain that she endured as his mother. We worry about our kids walking outside to play in a park, right? How many of you have talked about this? When I was a kid, I'd get on my bike, right? And I'd leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning, and as long as I was home by the time the street lights were on, my mom didn't worry about me at all. Is that true today? No. So I still worry about my children, and they're adults. I can't even imagine the worry that Mary endured and the pain that she experienced because of who her son was. But the joy Jesus' life brought to her and to us is way, way larger. It exceeds the pain that she had to endure. Have you ever been through something terribly painful? Of course, Gina. I'm over 10, right? Have you ever been through something that was terribly painful at the time, but when you look back on it now, if you had to do it all over again, you would? Because the rewards, the growth, the self-actualization, all that came from that was so rewarding that as painful as it was, you might be willing to do it again. Now, obviously, that's not everything. But I hope maybe you can find at least one thing that was painful and yet brings you joy now. So the oxymoron of serving joyfully can bring pain is true, right? So when you're serving joyfully, it doesn't always mean that you're laughing and having a good time and you're in good conversation. Sometimes serving joyfully is standing in a pain that down the road will bring you joy, right? So it doesn't always have to be, like love doesn't always have to be warm and fuzzy. Serving joyfully doesn't always have to mean you're smiling and laughing and having a great time. And the last component of the new United Methodist Vision Statement is lead courageously. Chris?
Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. Finally, Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
So as people of faith, it's important to lead courageously by following Jesus' example of resisting evil in all its forms. It's this part of the vision statement that calls us to protest and to support organizations that fight injustice and oppression. Leading courageously isn't always easy, and it rarely adds to our popularity. Because leading courageously requires us to speak truth to power, even when risks are involved. Risks that include angry retribution. Risk that includes lost relationships. Leading courageously requires leaving our ego and fear behind and walking forward in faith and trust. This recently released vision statement may or may not end up permeating the fabric of all Methodist churches. And it may be that next week, if I were to say, hey, who can tell me what our brand statement is? Right? It may not permeate. Our vision statement may not permeate. Our mission statement may not. Our brand statement you see every week, so there's really not, you got to at least admit that that's available for us to read. But being able to say, oh my gosh, my life has been changed dramatically right now, may not be. But the leaders who spent 4 years in prayerful discernment, creating this vision statement, picking the words exactly the way they needed to be, surely it changed their lives. And a changed life changes lives. In chaos theory, there's something known as the butterfly effect. Are you familiar with that? And the butterfly effect was coined actually by a meteorologist. In 1960s, Edward Lorenz had the idea that tiny changes in the conditions of a complex system can lead to vastly different large-scale outcomes later on, right? So the butterfly effect, basically, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but if there's a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world, it interrupts the air, right? And that permeates and gets larger and larger, kind of like throwing a pebble in a water, and you've got a small wave that becomes bigger and bigger as it gets larger. So I'll say again what the butterfly effect states. It's that a tiny change in the conditions of a complex system. Okay, so a small change, and in our case, in the conditions of the United Methodist Church, right, can lead to vastly different large-scale outcomes later on. And I would suggest that the recent split we've had in the United Methodist Church because of our stance on the LGBTQ community started as a small, tiny motion, right? People coming together and saying, this is not right. And as it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, it changed our denomination, right? So the power of one, the power of an idea is incredibly strong. Don't ever underestimate what you can do by yourself, and especially with other people. So our brand promise written on the wall of our fellowship hall serves as a reminder of our interconnectedness to an organization larger than 3717 West Main Street, right? It also reminds us that we are interconnected to each other. Did you say 12 million? 12 million others. And to the God of the universe. We are not now, nor have we ever been, alone. Thanks be to God. Amen.